I stood in the parking lot of Seattle Grace Memorial, watching my son's casket being loaded into the hearse. The rain had stopped, but my hands wouldn't. They trembled as I clutched the funeral program, Michael's face smiling back at me from the cover. 35 years old. Gone. 2 years. That's how long I'd watched ALS steal my boy piece by piece. First his hands, then his legs, then his voice. But never his mind. Never his heart. I'd retired early from the fire department to care for him. Moved into his guest room. Learned to operate feeding tubes and breathing machines. Jessica, his wife, had made it clear she wanted no part of it. "Your father can handle it," she'd said, not even looking up from her phone. "I have showings." Now the funeral was over, and I was still standing in that parking lot because I had nowhere else to go. My own house. Sold 18 months ago to pay for an experimental treatment that didn't work. My savings, gone to medical bills that insurance wouldn't cover. My pension, barely enough for groceries. Robert. I turned. Jessica stood there in her black dress, designer sunglasses hiding her eyes, even though the Seattle sky was gray as concrete. Her real estate agent smile was nowhere to be seen. "We need to talk," she said. We walked back toward Michael's condo. My legs felt heavy. I'd been awake for 36 hours, sitting vigil those last nights, holding Michael's hand while the ventilator breathed for him. Jessica had been in Spokane, closing a deal. She unlocked the door, and I followed her inside. The hospital bed was still in the living room. I'd need to call the medical supply company, arrange for pickup. Michael's wheelchair sat by the window where he liked to watch the sunrise over Puget Sound. "Sit down," Jessica said. I sat on the couch where I'd slept most nights, too anxious to use the guest room, needing to be close in case Michael needed me. Jessica remained standing. She pulled an envelope from her purse. "Michael left a will," she said. "I've already spoken to the attorney. Everything goes to me, as it should. The condo, the life insurance, everything." My chest tightened. I hadn't even thought about inheritance. I'd been focused on keeping my son alive, then on getting through the funeral. "I understand," I said quietly. "Good." She glanced around the condo. "I'm listing this place next week. Already have a buyer interested. Tech worker. Paying cash. So I need you out." I blinked. "When?" "Tonight." The word hit me like a physical blow. "Jessica, I don't have. That's not my problem." Her voice was flat, businesslike, the same tone she probably used to evict tenants. "Michael's gone. You're not family anymore. You're just a guest who's overstayed. I'm his father. And I'm his widow." She pulled out her phone. "I'm calling a locksmith. New locks will be installed at 6 p.m. If you're still here, I'll call the police for trespassing." I stood slowly, my firefighter instincts kicking in even through the grief. "Assess the situation. Find the exit. Save what you can." "Let me just pack Michael's things," I said. "His photos. His—" "Already donated," she said. "Goodwill picked up this morning, while you were at the cemetery. Clothes, books, photos, everything. They gave me a tax receipt." The room tilted. His paramedic jacket? The one from his first day? Gone. The photo album from his childhood? "Jessica, those were," I said, "gone." She checked her watch. "You have 4 hours." I gathered what I could. Toiletries, the few clothes I'd brought, my phone charger. Everything I owned fit in one duffel bag. I moved like a ghost through that condo, seeing Michael everywhere. The kitchen where I'd blended his meals. The bathroom where I'd helped him shower. The window where we'd watched the ferries cross Elliott Bay while I read him the news because his eyes couldn't focus anymore. At 5:45, I stood at the door. "Jessica," I said, "Michael loved you. Until the very end, he defended you. He said you were just scared, that you didn't know how to handle his illness." She looked at me over her sunglasses. Her eyes were dry. "Your son was weak," she said. "He should have fought harder. Should have kept working. Instead, he became a burden. And now he's gone, and I can finally move on with my life. You should do the same." She opened the door. "Oh, and Robert?" She smiled, and it was the cruelest thing I'd ever seen. "Don't expect anything from Michael's will. Not a cent. Not a photograph. Not a memory. I made sure of that. He signed everything over to me 6 months ago when he could still hold a pen. So whatever you're hoping for, whatever you think you're owed for playing nurse, forget it." I walked out into the Seattle drizzle. Behind me, I heard the door close. Lock click, deadbolt slide. I stood on the sidewalk with my duffel bag and thought about the last thing Michael had said to me. His voice was gone by then, stolen by the disease, but he could still mouth words if you watched carefully. Love you, Dad. Trust me. Trust him? Trust what? He was gone. I walked to my car, a 15-year-old Honda Civic that burned oil and had 200,000 miles on it. I sat in the driver's seat and tried to think. I had $340 in my bank account. My pension didn't arrive until the first of the month, 8 days away. I had no family in Seattle except Michael, and Michael was in the ground. I drove to a Motel 6 near the airport. The clerk quoted me $65 a night. How long? He asked. I did the math. 5 nights, and I'd be broke. Just tonight, I said. The room smelled like cigarettes and bleach. I lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere, a couple was arguing. Somewhere else, a baby cried. I thought about my son, about the way he'd smiled even when the disease had taken everything else, about the way he'd mouthed that I love you those last days, about the way Jessica had thrown me out like garbage. I must have fallen asleep because I woke to someone knocking. Morning light filtered through the thin curtains. I checked my phone. 9 a.m. Checkout was at 11. I opened the door. A woman in a gray suit stood there. Professional, maybe 55, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Robert Miller? She asked. Yes? My name is Patricia Dawson. I'm an attorney. I represent your son Michael's estate. She handed me a card. May I come in? I stepped aside, confused. Jessica had said the will was settled. Everything to her. Patricia sat in the room's only chair. I remained standing. I apologize for tracking you down, she said. Your daughter-in-law said you'd left no forwarding address. I had to call area motels. How did you know I was in a motel? I didn't. But Jessica mentioned she'd asked you to vacate the condo yesterday. Given your financial situation, I made an educated guess. She opened her briefcase. Mr. Miller, I need you to attend a will reading. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., at my office downtown. Jessica said the will was already settled. Patricia's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Mrs. Miller received a preliminary distribution. Yes. However, there are additional provisions that require your presence. What kind of provisions? I'm not at liberty to discuss the details until the formal reading. But I can tell you that Michael was very specific about wanting you there. She pulled out a business card with an address. Can you attend? What choice did I have? Yes. Good. She stood. One more thing. Are you currently staying here? Just for last night. I can't afford... She pulled out her wallet and counted out $500 bills. Michael set aside funds for immediate family expenses. Consider this a advance distribution. I stared at the money. I don't understand. You will, she said. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Don't be late. After she left, I sat on the bed holding those bills. $500. It felt like a fortune and an insult at the same time, but it meant I could eat, could stay here a few more nights while I figured out what to do next. I spent that day walking Seattle. I couldn't stand being in that room, couldn't stand thinking. I walked through Pike Place Market, past the fish throwers and flower stalls. I walked along the waterfront, watching the ferries. I ended up at Cary Park, looking down at the city Michael had loved. He'd wanted to be a firefighter like me. But after I retired, he'd become a paramedic instead. Someone needs to save lives, Dad, he'd said. Might as well be a Miller. 3 years into the job, his hands started shaking. Tremors, then weakness, then the diagnosis that stole everything. Amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. No cure, no treatment, just a slow, cruel decline. Jessica had married him 2 years before the diagnosis. She'd loved the strong, active paramedic. She hadn't signed up for the man who needed help eating, who needed a machine to breathe, who needed his father to bathe him. I can't do this, she'd told me, 6 months in. I'm not a caregiver. He's your husband, I'd said. He's your son, so I'd done it. Retired early, sold my house, spent every penny and every moment keeping my boy alive, keeping him comfortable, keeping him human. And for what? To be thrown out by his wife? To be told I'd get nothing? That night, back at the motel, I tried to sleep but couldn't. Tomorrow I'd go to this will reading, hear whatever Michael had left me, probably some token amount, maybe enough for a security deposit on an apartment, maybe not. I thought about those last words again. Trust me. The next morning, I put on my only suit. It was old, from Michael's high school graduation, but it still fit. I drove downtown, found parking in a garage I couldn't afford, and took the elevator to the 14th floor. Patricia Dawson's office overlooked Elliott Bay. Through the windows, I could see the Space Needle, the ferries, the Olympic Mountains in the distance, Michael's Seattle. "Mr. Miller," Patricia greeted me. "Right on time. Please, have a seat." The conference room had a long table. I sat on one side. A minute later, the door opened, and Jessica walked in. She froze when she saw me. "What is he doing here?" she demanded. "Mrs. Miller, please sit down," Patricia said calmly. Jessica remained standing. She wore a red power suit, her realtor armor. I was told this was a formality. Sign some papers, collect the rest of the insurance money. "Please sit down," Patricia repeated. Jessica sat, but as far from me as possible. She wouldn't look at me. Patricia opened a folder. "We're here for the formal reading of Michael Robert Miller's last will and testament. The document was prepared and executed on November 3rd, 6 months before Michael's death, while he was still of sound mind and body to make such decisions." "I know all this," Jessica said. "He left everything to me. We went over this." "Mrs. Miller, you received certain assets under the preliminary distribution," Patricia said. "However, that was not the entirety of Michael's estate." Jessica's perfect composure cracked slightly. "What do you mean?" Patricia began reading. Legal language, cold and formal. I tried to focus, but my mind kept drifting. Michael in his paramedic uniform. Michael learning to walk again after his first fall. Michael crying when he couldn't hold a fork anymore. "To my beloved wife, Jessica Ann Miller, I leave my personal vehicle, a 2018 Toyota Camry, and the contents of our joint checking account, totaling approximately $42,000. Jessica nodded, satisfied. "That's it?" I asked. "The condo?" Patricia looked at me. "The condo was never in Michael's name, Mr. Miller. It was purchased solely under Mrs. Miller's name 3 years ago." "I paid the down payment," Jessica said. "My money, my property." Patricia continued reading. "To St. Jude Children's Hospital, I leave a donation of $50,000 from my life insurance policy." Jessica's head snapped up. "What?" Michael's life insurance policy, through his paramedic union, paid out $500,000 upon his death. The preliminary distribution to you, Mrs. Miller, was $100,000. $50,000 goes to St. Jude's. The remaining $350,000 is allocated as follows. The room went silent. Jessica's face had gone pale. $350,000, Patricia read, is to be divided between my father, Robert James Miller, and the ALS Therapy Development Institute. The split is $200,000 to my father, $150,000 to ALS TDI. I couldn't breathe. $200,000. Jessica stood up. "That's impossible. Michael wouldn't." "Please sit down, Mrs. Miller. He was dying. He wasn't thinking straight. I'll contest this. Mrs. Miller." Patricia's voice was steel now. "Michael was evaluated by 3 separate physicians before executing this will. All certified he was of sound mind. The will is ironclad. But I'm his wife. I took care of him." "No," I heard myself say. "You didn't." Jessica whirled on me. "How dare you?" "You donated his clothes while I was at his funeral," I said quietly. "His photos, his memories. You threw me out the day we buried him. You called him weak." "That's a lie." Patricia reached into her briefcase and pulled out a small recording device. "Before we proceed to the final provision, I need to play something Michael asked me to include in this reading." She pressed play. Michael's voice filled the room. Not the mechanical ventilator voice from those last weeks, but his real voice, recorded 6 months earlier when he could still speak. "Dad, if you're hearing this, I'm gone. And I'm sorry. Sorry you had to watch me die. Sorry I couldn't fight harder. Sorry I left you alone." My eyes burned. "But I need you to know something. Everything you did for me, every meal you made, every bath you helped me with, every night you stayed awake watching me breathe, that wasn't wasted. You gave me 2 extra years. The doctor said 6 months, remember? But you fought for me. You believed in me. You never gave up. Jessica sat frozen. Jessica, if you're hearing this too, I want you to know I understood. I understood you couldn't handle it. That's why I made these arrangements. The money you received is yours. Use it well. But the rest goes to the person who actually cared, who actually showed up, who actually loved me even when I was broken. There was a pause, the sound of Michael breathing, struggling even then. Dad, there's one more thing. Patricia stopped the recording. This final provision is for you alone, Mr. Miller. Mrs. Miller, you're excused. Like hell I am, Jessica shouted. I want to hear. The provision specifically requests privacy, Patricia said. You can leave voluntarily, or I can have security escort you. Jessica grabbed her purse. At the door, she turned back to me. You poisoned him against me, she hissed. You turned my husband into... Your husband died loving you, I said. Even after everything, he still made sure you were taken care of. That's more grace than you deserved. She left, slamming the door. Patricia waited a moment, then pressed play again. Dad, you remember that patent application I filed? The modified ventilator interface I designed while I could still use my hands? The one that would let ALS patients communicate better? I did remember. Michael had worked on it for months, sketching designs, testing prototypes. I'd thought it was just something to keep his mind occupied. A medical device company bought it 3 months ago. I didn't tell anyone. I wanted it to be a surprise. Dad, they paid me $300,000. My heart stopped. That money is in a separate account. Patricia has the details. It's yours. All of it. Use it however you want. Travel. Relax. Live the retirement you gave up for me. But Dad, I have one request. Patricia handed me a tissue. I didn't realize I was crying. Don't let this money just sit there. Don't let my death be the end of the story. I want you to live. Really live. Do the things we talked about. Alaska fishing. Grand Canyon. Italy. Remember when I was 8 and you promised we'd see the Sistine Chapel together? I remembered. God, I remembered. I can't go now, but you can. And when you do, take a photo for me. Put it on my grave. Show me the world, Dad. Show me you're okay. The recording clicked off. Patricia slid papers across the table. The patent money is in an account earning interest. Current balance is $314,000. Along with a life insurance distribution of $200,000, your total inheritance is $514,000. I stared at the numbers. They didn't make sense. This was a mistake. This was... Michael also left you this. Patricia handed me a sealed envelope with my name in Michael's handwriting. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a photo. Me and Michael at Cary Park 5 years ago before the diagnosis. We were smiling, arms around each other, the Seattle skyline behind us. On the back, Michael had written, Dad, you taught me what love looks like. It looks like sacrifice. It looks like showing up. It looks like staying when everyone else leaves. Thank you for being my hero. Now, go be your own. Love always, Mike. Below that, a P.S. P.S. Jessica thinks I signed everything over to her 6 months ago. I let her think that. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is let them show you who they really are. Now you know. Now you're free. I sat in that conference room for a long time after Patricia left. Through the window, I watched the ferries cross the bay. Watched the city my son had loved. Watched the world keep turning even though mine had stopped. $514,000. Michael hadn't just left me money. He'd left me freedom. He'd left me proof that every sleepless night, every exhausted morning, every moment I'd chosen him over everything else, it had mattered. He'd seen it. He'd valued it. He'd found a way to say thank you even from the grave. I thought about Jessica's face when she'd heard about the life insurance. About the way she'd called Michael weak. About how she'd thrown out his photos while I was at the cemetery. And I thought about Michael's words. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is let them show you who they really are. He'd known. The whole time, he'd known what she was. And he'd planned accordingly. 6 months later, I stood in the Sistine Chapel. The ceiling stretched above me, Michelangelo's masterpiece, and I thought about my son, about his broken hands trying to sketch ventilator designs. about his brilliant mind trapped in a failing body, about his capacity for love even in the face of betrayal. I took a photo, not of the ceiling, but of myself standing there, tears on my face, alive and breathing and free. That night, I visited Michael's grave. I'd had a proper headstone installed, black granite with gold lettering. Mikau, Robert Miller, paramedic, inventor, beloved son. He saved lives, even his own father's. I placed the photo from the Sistine Chapel against the stone. "I saw it, son," I whispered. "It was beautiful. You were right. It's all beautiful." The money didn't bring Michael back. It didn't erase the grief or fill the void he'd left. But it did something else. It let me live. Really live. Alaska fishing caught a 40-pound king salmon. Grand Canyon hiked rim to rim. Italy, Ireland, Japan, New Zealand. I also donated $100,000 to ALS research in Michael's name. Started a small foundation to help families dealing with ALS, covering costs that insurance won't. Because I remembered what it was like to choose between experimental treatments and keeping a roof over your head. I remembered what it was like to be alone and broke and desperate. Jessica, I heard, sold the condo for a significant profit and moved to California. I never saw her again, never wanted to. But sometimes, on quiet nights, I think about what she said. You won't get a cent from your son's will. She was wrong. But more than that, she'd missed the point entirely. The money was nice. The money gave me options, gave me freedom, gave me the ability to honor my son's memory. But what Michael really left me was something far more valuable. He left me proof that love wins, that showing up matters, that sacrifice isn't wasted, that even when the world tells you to give up, to walk away, to protect yourself, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stay. He left me the knowledge that I'd been the father he needed, that I'd done enough, that I'd been enough. And he left me his voice on that recording, telling me to live. So that's what I do. Every day, I live. For both of us. Because that's what heroes do. And Michael, he was mine. But in the end, somehow, I got to be his too.